in the field of Islamic finance to know the future challenges of Islamic finance. So normally our programs and activities focus on Islamic finance, banking, and Islamic marketing, retail, and corporate strategies, policies, and Sharia compliant issues, and fintech, digital management, and Sharia compliant other management issues and relevant to the banks and financial institutions. We are trying our best to promote Sharia compliant strategies and policies globally. So today, our special guest speakers is Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Eskandar Shah, who is Associate Professor at the College of Islamic Studies, Hamad bin Khalifa University, Qatar Foundation, Qatar. And Dr. Eskandar he also holds a PhD in finance from University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and a Master in Islamic Economics and Finance from University of Queensland, Australia. And his bachelor degree is from International Islamic University in Malaysia. And prior to joining Hamad bin Khalifa University, Prof. Eskandar sorry, just a minute. Okay, sorry, Dr. Eskandar is joining in 2 minutes. He was just praying, performing salat. So as I said, Dr. Eskandar, he was the Dean of his School of Graduate and Professional Studies at the International Center for Education in Islamic Finance, INSIF, a postgraduate university specializing in Islamic finance established by the National Bank of Malaysia. And he was also assistant professor at the Department of Finance, Kuliah of Economics and Management, International Islamic University in Malaysia. And during his doctoral studies, he worked as a tutor at the University of Nottingham, a lecturer at the Nottingham Trent International College, United Kingdom. His main teaching and research interests are in the area of corporate finance, portfolio management, and Islamic capital market. He has published articles in several journals and participated in conferences as invited speaker, panelist, and also presenter. Dr. Eskandar is also a subject matter expert for Securities Industry Development Corporation. He is also a financial sector specialist consultant for World Bank and advisor for Brunei Institute of Leadership and Islamic Finance. And he's also the managing editor for World Scientific Annual Review of Islamic Finance and an associate editor for Turkish Journal of Islamic Economics, International Journal of Islamic and Middle Eastern Finance, and Asian Academy of Management, Journal of Accounting and Finance. So Dr. Eskandar, he was also the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies, Deputy Director of BNP Paribas Center of Islamic Asset and Wealth Management, Treasurer of Malaysian Finance Association. So this is an honor to invite Associate Professor Dr. Eskandar to conduct today's lecture on future challenges of Islamic finance. So I would like to invite Dr. Iskandar to conduct the session. And let me share the screen and the slides. Yeah, welcome, Doctor.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Doctor, how are you?
I'm okay. Sorry
it
for.
was a little bit problems.
I thought it's 1 o'clock Doha time, but apparently it's 1 o'clock Kuwait time. So yeah.
Oh yeah, never mind. Alhamdulillah, we are still on time. No problem. Thank you very much for joining, Doctor.
Okay.
So I think slides is visible now.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yes, Doctor. I think you can start the session, inshallah.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson, Dr. Mohd, again for giving me this opportunity. I believe that this is my fourth time participating in this event. I guess this is a weekly event for these associations, and over time this event is getting a lot more tractions, and more importantly is actually creating these conversations. So what I'm going to share today is that it's basically some of them is based on my ideas, what I have in mind in terms of research, in terms of how I see Islamic finance industry in terms of moving forward. But more importantly, it's also a reflection of our new journal that we're going to start very soon. So this journal is also going to talk about some of the new ideas and new concepts that really relevant for Islamic finance. So in a short period of time, was able to put up my thoughts together, and inshallah I would like to share these thoughts with you all, and probably also get some feedback from the participants in terms of how exactly that we can create a better narrative for Islamic finance. Again, I'm just a human. I wouldn't claim that whatever that I'm sharing is the best solutions or is the perfect solutions. But these are some of the thoughts that I put together based on my reading and my research, and in terms of how I want to drive my research and my contribution to the scholarly work. Can we move on? Next one, Doctor. Okay. So before we move forward, we really have to take stock of what we have achieved. Alhamdulillah, as you can probably look at the first slides or the first figures, Islamic finance is greater, wider acceptance. There are many reasons for it. A is quite simple right now in terms of establishing Islamic banking, because the regulation is quite robust. For example, if one country wants to implement Islamic banking, they can just adapt or adopt some of the regulation from other countries. So Middle East have its own template, Malaysia has its own template. So a lot of countries are actually doing it by allowing some level of customizations and implementing and establishing Islamic banking. Next one, Doctor, I think we are, okay, all right. So as you can see, the Islamic finance assets are growing over the years, and this is thanks to enhanced regulation. But more importantly, is also thanks to the liquidity that being created in the Gulf market. So now petrol prices are increasing, gas prices are increasing as well. So as you can see that there's a serial correlation between commodity prices and also liquidity in the especially in the Muslim countries, and that driving the growth of Islamic finance as well. So this is the second round where we are having high commodity prices. The first one we had about 10 years ago, and now this is the second round. And hopefully this time the liquidity that being created can stay within the Islamic finance market and can actually drive those economic growth within the GCC and also the MENA countries. That's number one. Number two, although Islamic finance is been growing, but the growth is mainly driven by banking. So if you look at the second figures, you can probably see that the 70% of the asset size in Islamic finance are still banking centric. So this is one of the biggest limitation when it comes to Islamic finance. Because to move forward, as you all probably know, that to move forward in terms of having much more robust ecosystem, we need to have a greater or more deeper or deepening the capital market. All right. So the depth of the capital market is not there. And you can see that even there is a capital market, majority of the capital market is actually driven by Sukuk, which is still what we call as a fixed coupon instruments or fixed income instruments. Islamic fund is mainly is about 178 billion. To put it in perspective, how small is 178 billion, you can probably see that if you take one company like BlackRock in America, a fund management company, they are managing close to $3 trillion of assets. So one company have basically a much larger fund management size as compared to all the fund managements in the Muslim world. So this is something which is very disturbing, because when you don't have a robust fund management industry, what will happen is that all the liquidity that being created in the Middle East or even in the all rich countries, is basically going to go to outside the regions. Okay, it will be managed by either by conventional fund or even by Islamic fund outside that particular region. So this is something which is quite disturbing, because you probably know we don't put all our money in the bank all the time, because banks are not really generating a good return. So sometimes banks are generating return which is below inflation. So people have to basically move the money from banking towards fund management or even Sukuk, which is much more robust in terms of providing a stable or higher return. So this is something that you all have to think about, how exactly that we can create an ecosystem which is less banking centric but more towards a capital market centric. But other than that, I think we have achieved a lot. There are a lot more banking institutions and financial institutions, but more importantly, there are many more Islamic finance education providers now. There are many more institutions that are offering Islamic finance, thanks to some of the early movers and some of the other institutions that now start adopting Islamic finance and recognize Islamic finance and as an established curriculum. And as far as research are concerned, I guess more and more papers are being published, but what we want is that more and more papers are being published in the context of policy directions, and also in the context of innovating new ideas in Islamic finance, as compared to just comparing performance, comparing efficiency, and comparing in the context of a dual banking system as well. Okay, and why so? Because I would say Islamic finance right now at the crossroad. Islamic finance is somewhere at the point where is find it difficult to move forward with the new ideas. In fact, Islamic finance sometimes are regressing in the context of actually converging towards some of the old ideas that we are still adopting in the past. Okay, can we move on? Next slide, please, Doctor. Okay, so what we know so far. So all the things that we know so far about Islamic banking seems to be quite impressive. Right, what we have achieved so far as far Islamic banking contexts are concerned are quite impressive. One of it is basically the turning point was 2008, because in 2008 we probably realized that one of the, I would probably say, seminal paper that been published that shows that as far efficiency is concerned, as far capital adequacy is concerned, as far stability is concerned, and even NPL are concerned, Islamic banks actually did perform better. I wouldn't say Islamic banking were leading the policy changes, but one of the things that they did after the 2008, they came out with the Basel III requirement where they put a capital adequacy ratio of almost 8%. And this is actually a landmark movement, because majority of the conventional banks, some of the largest banks at that time, including Deutsche Bank and ABN AMRO and so on and so forth, they were having a capital adequacy only about 2% or 3%. That means the high leverage of conventional banks actually put them at risk. That's number one. Number two, conventional banks are also involved significantly in the risk-taking activities, especially involving in derivatives. So there are two advantages of Islamic banking at that point of time. So you can put aside products differentiations, which people can argue that, especially in the context of Malaysia, Indonesia, so on and so forth, products very much similar, even though we are using a lot of commodity, murabaha, buy-in, maybe in this part of the world, they are more ijara and, and so on and so forth. So I'm not really want to go into that debate and that discussion, but I'm just going to talk about Islamic banking as a whole. We can probably say that, some of the governance of Islamic banking as far the risk-taking activities are concerned, staying away heavily from involving in speculative investment and derivatives. That's number one. And number two, having a higher capitalization also have made Islamic banking and more resilient. And today we all know that Basel III requirement is about minimum of 8%. But if you look at Islamic bank's balance sheet right now, especially in the context of Malaysia, I didn't do for others. I'm just aware about what's happening, at least for now, in Malaysia. Majority of the Islamic banks have a capital adequacy of at least 14% to 18%. Some of the banks are even having much more than that. So this is one of the, I would say, a better way of doing banking, because you are providing services to the customers without jeopardizing the stability of the bank itself. All right, you are not involving in high risk-taking activities that will jeopardize the future of the bank and actually put the customers at risk. Because we all know that the banks are providing service, a custodian to our deposit, and try to basically ensure the money flows from the surplus to deficit in the best way, in the efficient way, in such a way that it support the real economic growth. So we do not want our banking to support the growth by involving in what we call as risk-taking activities. I think one of the famous quote that I always hear most often time is that in America, for every dollar that being created, almost 90 cents goes to speculative financing. Only 1%, or basically, only about 3 to 10% goes to real investment activities. So this is one of the reasons why, we see that despite the fact that America or Western world are so rich, but the richness is mainly created from where? From asset appreciation. It's being created because of the stock market's appreciation. It's being created because of the boom in the property market. It's being created because of involvement in financial transaction, or what we call as securitization. So very little value are actually being created from real economic activity. So what you see in America, in many Western world, is that even to a certain extent in the Muslim world, because whether we like it or not, we still embrace their philosophy, right? Despite all this boom in the stock market and also the property market, only few people are actually enjoying this benefit. Who are enjoying? People who actually own the capital. And who own the capital? Basically between 5 to 10% of the population who basically own substantial portion of the capital. So we have created a world where wealth can be created not from involving so much in real economic activity that actually create growth, create job, create employment, create new ideas, innovation, but wealth can also be created what we call as through heavily involvement in speculative investment with the appreciation of the property prices and also stock prices. And you probably noticed that during COVID, Dow Jones, for example, have gone up from gone down from 28,000 to 18,000, but then went all the way to 36,000 because of the performance of the tech stocks, because overvaluation of the tech stock, because of hyper excitement of investors into tech stocks. And some people trying to understand the correlation, you realize that during COVID, there's so much of liquidity being created in the American economy because trillions of dollars that are being pumped into the market. So where does all this money goes? Apparently, substantial amount of money actually goes to speculative investment. However, when you look at Islamic banking, all right, although it's not perfect, but at least even though the product can be debatable, some of the people argue that the product still going along similar line, especially in the context of Malaysia, but they are still good thing about Islamic banking where you actually have higher capitalization, lower risk, lower non-performing loans, and more importantly, the spirit of Islamic banks is also overlapping with a lot of ideas of sustainability as well. So it's quite easy for us to embrace sustainability because we always want to do good things for the people, fulfilling the maqasid al-Sharia instead of exploiting them. So these are some of the research that people are working on, whether Islamic banking is actually have reduced inequality or Islamic banking actually have increased inclusion. So I will talk about this a bit more after this, but these are some of the thoughts that we have to really consider, because the success of Islamic banking, not just because we want to have a higher market share, but the success of Islamic banking should be measured based on how much impact that we are making to the society. The first part of Islamic banking or Islamic finance is to get acceptance. You know, we want people to talk about it. We want people to embrace the idea of Islamic banking, and we already have it. We have robust regulation, we have robust framework, we have robust liquidity management, we have robust risk management, so on and so forth. But now the question is that we want people to make, sense of Islamic banking. So today I was talking to one of the learned professor at HBKU, and he said, if you talk about Islam, you need to ensure that, Islam provide the best, and people can see the best. And people can see the beauty of Islam through our products and through our services and through our quality. And the fact that he's actually coming from Turkey. So he said that, for example, when people travel using Turkish airline, people can see that, a Muslim country, a Muslim company can provide a world-class service. The same thing, for example, maybe with Qatar Airways, in Emirates, and with Dubai, with Etihad, and so on and so forth. So he says that whenever people can see that, even Muslim companies and Muslim countries can provide orderly services, so that is a significant da'wah, where we can tell the people that, if you do Islamic banking, you actually will get a better service, more stable, lower risk, value for money, and at the same time support sustainability as well. So this is what we know so far and what we have achieved so far. But doesn't mean that we can be celebrating our success. We got a long way to go, because the size of Islamic banking is only about 2% or 3%, although our population in the world is about 25%, but our asset size is still relatively very small as compared to conventional. Some students argue, of course, if you look at overall asset size, because in the Western world, they include derivatives and so on and so forth. It's true, I agree with you, because the size of derivatives is too big, and when you include that, the Islamic banking size become too minute and too small. But despite that, we still have long way to go. But inshallah, with you all passionate about Islamic finance, attending webinars and attending classes, so on and so forth, we can do to get things together to basically to promote Islamic finance, and more specifically right now Islamic banking, because it represents 70%, and put them on the right path so that we can capture greater market share, not because we are Sharia compliant, because it's much more beautiful to do Islamic banking, and there's a beauty of it as compared to doing conventional banking. Next one, please. Okay, so what are some of the challenges? Okay, can we move on to the next one? Okay, all right. So this is quite the standard one. I thought of skipping this one, but I cannot, because when we talk about challenges, this remain one of the main stumbling block of Islamic finance. All right. And whether we like it or not, we must come together in terms of agreeing on some of the common principles. All right. Of course, we have institutions like FSB, ILM, like a multilateral institutions, a global high-level institution who are trying to provide the standards, so on and so forth. But then you look at it, is that how many countries are really implementing FSB? Okay, many are still adopting Basel, for example. Why? Because maybe Basel are much more robust and much more easy. And especially when you are working in the dual banking system, is much more, comfortable or convenient, I would say, to comply to those requirements. And then on the other hand, we also have AUFI standard, which is widely being used in Middle East as well. Well, so what is the problem of when you have standardization issue? Doing business will be more complicated. There can be a regulatory arbitrage, or what we call a Sharia arbitrage. And also reporting can also become quite complicated as well. And if you compare on the other aspect of industry, which is, or under other aspects of ideas which is emerging lately, which is sustainability, a lot of effort actually being put in terms of coming out with a common narrative. I think SDG 17 is a very simple and straightforward common narrative that being adopted at the United Nations level. And then you have global reporting initiative, and then you have UN PRI, and so on and so forth. So when it's driven by high level, all right, and then it's being cascaded down at the country level and at the institutional level, then a lot of things actually become quite simple. For example, measuring is simple, reporting is simple, data taking is simple, compliance is simple, financing attributes is simple, and so on and so forth. So I'm not expecting the fact that we can achieve the same for Islamic finance, because we know that we are diverse. We have a different way of interpreting certain issues. For example, cryptocurrency is not permissible in Qatar, but is permissible in other Muslim countries, for example. Tawaro is maybe not permissible in many countries, but is also permissible in some countries. So we still have all these fundamental issues. But unfortunately, operating at the local level or more on the regional level will not put Islamic banking or Islamic finance at the forefront. Okay, we will struggle a lot to compete with the big boys if you're just basically being a localized bank. And people ask me why you are saying this, right? Why you are talking about all this, globalization in the context of the banking sector. But think about all the banks that we have in the world. Who's controlling the banking sector? We have HSBC, we have Citibank, we have Standard Chartered, we have Deutsche Bank, we have ABN AMRO, and I can go on and go on and on and talk about all these banks that really capturing the greatest market share in the world. And one thing they have in common is that they are not only successful in the global market, local market, including, let's say, BNP Paribas, so on and so forth. But they are also successful in the global market as well. So, and the presence of them in many parts of the world actually have improved the practices of the banking sector. And study also have shown, in fact, I also published recently a paper with my PhD student. In fact, he's the first author. We show that, the presence of the foreign banks drive better compliance, better governance, and increase the efficiency of the local banking sector. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if we want to grow, we cannot be just a local player. I know QNB, for example, although it's not a pure Islamic bank, but it's the bank originated from local Muslim countries, have a presence in few other countries, including Turkey, so on and so forth. But in Malaysia, Maybank, for example, have a presence in Indonesia, and so on and so forth. But we are more, cluttered in a very regional base, very proximity base, and or either cultural base, and so on and so forth. So we need to go beyond that and try to become a global banking, try to produce a global solution, and only then I think the size of the Islamic banking can actually grow further, or Islamic finance grow further. I first started doing Islamic finance 10 years ago when I joined INSEF in January 2013. And I still remember I did my first presentation. At that time, the size of Islamic finance was about 1.6% to 1.7%, close to 2%. And after 10 years, despite all the growth that we are talking about, we're still talking about 2 to 3% of the asset size. That means we have achieved a lot as far as the absolute numbers are concerned, but we have achieved very little as far as the relative numbers compared to the conventional finance. And this is one of the biggest issues which I have that prevent ourselves to become a global players. And we need to really sort it out, and more research and more work need to be done in terms of how we can harmonize the regulation between AUFI, IFSB, and also the Basel, so that Islamic banking can actually become, or Islamic finance can become a global player. Next one, please. All right. So the other issue that we have is that on one hand, we realize that the lack of regulations or standardizations is a concern that we need to address. The other concern that we have to address is that it's about the idea of convergence. And look at it, right? These two, the green color and the orange color. The green color is basically the fixed coupon, fixed discount, zero coupon suku, or discounted suku, and the orange color is actually plain vanilla fixed coupon, or basically, more or less we pay you a fixed payment. So despite the fact that suku is representing 19% of the Islamic finance asset size, but the attribute of suku that we see today very much converging with what we call as the conventional bond. I still remember when I first attended Islamic finance class, and this is where I try to embrace Islamic finance after completing my PhD in conventional, because I realized that contributing to Islamic finance is much more better because I have greater role to play. So I start learning about Islamic capital market. Then the first thing I learned in class is that, okay, when we talk about suku, it has to be asset-backed suku. Okay, so what you mean by asset-backed suku? Then I asked, okay, asset-backed suku must have a collateral. The collateral must be transferred to the third-party owner. It has to be ring-fenced. It has to be asset-based. Asset-backed. If in the case of default, the asset will be transferred to the owners. So in that case, it's more equity-based, it's not actually debt-based. And by doing this, we can reduce the level of indebtedness, the level of leverage, and it will reduce the global fragility. And then they will start discussing kind of Rogoff paper that shows that all the countries in the world that start failing because of a high indebtedness, high level of leverage at the consumer level, at the company level, and the government level. So then I thought, oh my God, this is fantastic. Finally, we figure out how exactly that we can actually use an alternative for coupon. And even you use coupon, you can still use the basic principle, but the rate of the coupon depends on the performance of the underlying asset. So I thought, oh, this is actually fantastic, and this is one of the good innovation. But then after a while, I realized that throughout many years, there are only few asset-backed sukuk that has been issued in the world. Why is that the case? Because it's complicated, it's time-consuming. Company really doesn't want to give out their best asset. Whenever they do asset back, they only transfer their worst asset. They want to keep the good ones and they want to let go the bad ones. So there are a lot of asymmetric information, transaction costs, and so on and so forth. So then they come up with a better innovation. They come up with a more, I would probably say, lenient innovation. Okay, they call it asset-based sukuk. And what they say in asset-based, okay, you don't really have to transfer the legal ownership. You only have to transfer the beneficial ownership. So in this way, you can still get the financing, all right, by keeping your asset, but you only transfer the beneficial ownership, and in return, you pay them, a compensation, or what we call as the coupon for the beneficial ownership. So in this way, it's much more faster. You can do it within 3 weeks or 2 weeks, the whole documentation, because you don't really have to transfer the legal ownership and buy back and so on and so forth. All right. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a middle ground. We cannot move to the other extreme immediately. This is a transition. Okay. And then it's become very popular. Everyone is start doing asset-based sukuk because you can predetermine the price using wa'ad. And then you can still issue the sukuk. And I thought this is still okay. You know why? Because you still have to use the money for Islamic purpose, and there's still underlying asset involved, and so on and so forth. So this is not like conventional finance that you raise the money for speculative investment. But over time, what has happened is that maybe I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but especially in Malaysia, what has happened is that people say, oh, we don't have enough asset now in terms of issuing sukuk. Oh, I already use my asset in terms of raising financing. How about if I want to raise financing, for example, for working capital? What should I do? So then people came up with this idea of asset light, which you don't really need the asset, or you can just use commodity murabaha, which you only hold the asset for example, for 2-3 seconds, and you can actually do the transaction. So as much that we are very proud that Islamic finance is moving forward, as the growth is mainly generally driven by convergence because of convenience. So one of the biggest issue I have right now is that, it's good to see that the numbers are great and more people are talking about Islamic finance, but end of the day, the outcome is still purely based on the principle of capitalism. What is convenient, what is cheap, what reduce the WACC, and what increase the value for the company, which actually is good for the society as well. But what is the outcome of this? Every time you see a crisis, you see fragility. Okay, you still high level of indebtedness. And to make it worse right now, with the high inflation, high energy prices, and high food prices, and so on and so forth, high level of indebtedness among the consumer, among the company, and even among the nations make it difficult for many nations to basically weather these particular problems right now. Of course, we are living in, alhamdulillah, in a very blessed country. For example, in myself, I'm in Qatar right now. Alhamdulillah, we are so blessed. We don't have energy crisis because government subsidize it. The food prices are still similar, because whenever the prices increase so much, the government intervene and try to provide subsidies, so on and so forth. But these benefits are not enjoyed by many countries. In most countries, especially Pakistan, Bangladesh, in African countries and everything, the number one problem today are energy crisis, higher fuel crisis, and also food securities as well. So these are some of the things that we need to think about in terms of how we move forward. There's no point of Islamic finance is making better progress, but it will not able to solve the real problem for the people. Next one, please. Okay, how long I have? Okay, I have another 10 minutes. Okay, can we move on? Dr. Muhyiddin, I have another 10 minutes, right? Yeah, okay. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, all right. So I don't want to talk so much about the political scenario in the Muslim world, but I just want to share my concern because many of the Muslim countries are falling apart. You look at Syria now, Lebanon, of course, Libya, and to a certain extent, Yemen, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get into this conflict, but I just want to tell you one thing is that majority of these conflicts are happening where the youth unemployment is very high. Okay, even in Tunisia and everything. Muslim world is suffering with the highest youth employment. Okay, the youth unemployment in the Muslim world is the highest because we have the highest number of youth in the world. So in other words, we are not able to provide opportunity for our youth in terms of making a career in the Muslim world. Apart from few GCC countries, all right, where they have the ability to absorb their own graduates. Unfortunately, many of the GCC or even MENA countries or even in Muslim countries in general are not able to create enough opportunity for the youth. Why is that the case? Number one, of course, our population is growing over the years. Alhamdulillah, unlike conventional world or Western world, where they are experiencing whether is that they are actually the problem, they are facing the problem of negative growth rate. But in the Muslim world, alhamdulillah, we are still having a positive population growth rate. That's number one. And number two, more and more Muslims are now educated. Education attainment among the youth, Muslim youth, are also getting better, thanks to many more new universities that have been established in the Muslim countries. You go to Istanbul, for example, Ibn Khaldun, Istanbul Zaim University, Marmara, and many more. Even in GCC, like in Saudi, in Doha, in Dubai, there are many more universities that are being established. But unfortunately, because of the political instability and lack of innovations in the Muslim world, we are not able to create enough jobs. So why I'm telling you this is that can we So people say, okay, let's decouple economics and politics. But unfortunately, we cannot decouple economics and politics, right? We cannot, because it goes together. So what is politics? Politics is all about providing opportunity for the people so that they will have a social mobility, and they will also have a capability of having a decent living, by having a job. When I talk about opportunity, I'm talking about employment. When I talk about decent living, I'm talking about prices and inflation. So that's what politics is all about. The same thing with economics. What is economics? Or if we talk about the role of a central bank, what is that? It's all about employment and also inflation. So in other words, the whole world revolves in the fact that we can live in this world. We can enjoy the basic amenities. We can basically enjoy what we need to have in terms of progressing in this world. But that can only provided when we bring together the idea of politics and economics together. And the moment you don't have one, it will be very difficult for you to have another. So if you don't believe me, you can go back and study history, and you can go at data for thousands of years. Prosperity is only being generated from a good leadership, from a good governance, and also with the good ideas that bring opportunity and innovation through basically talent development and also education. All right, and this is very important. If not, I think the future for the Muslim world going to be a bit more difficult, especially in some countries where there is no political stability. Next one, please. What happened to my slide?
Hello, sorry, Doctor. I think there is a connection problem. Now, is it okay?
Okay, now it's okay. All right, can we move on? Okay, I have another 10 minutes, right, Doctor? All right, okay, let me finish.
No
5
problem.
minutes. 5 minutes.
No
okay.
problem, Prof. You can continue. It's okay.
Okay, the other challenges that we have is that we have what we call as identity issues, all right? And I think this is very serious. Okay, if you look at Islamic banking, our size, we've been in the market for many years, or Islamic finance, we've been market in many years. In fact, when I first joined INSEF, people talk more about Islamic finance and less of sustainability. Only after 3 to 4 years after I joined INSEF, more and more people are talking about sustainability. But interestingly, Islamic finance is only about 3 trillion US dollars. Right? Maybe you put everything together. Maybe you say, we don't collect enough data. Okay, let's say 5 trillion. Okay, give and take 5 trillion, no problem. But sustainability alone right now is almost more than 80 over trillion. And it's keep increasing over the years. Maybe they will get close to 100 trillions. So within 5 to 10 years, or maybe you can say after SDG 17, everyone is start talking about sustainability, or maybe even before that, Millennium Development Goals, whatsoever and everything, we do not know. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that, how come Islamic finance, who embrace the principle of sustainability, is growing much lesser than the subset of Islamic finance itself? Because sustainability is not an identity by itself. It's just a subset of Islamic finance. Right? Even it's a subset of conventional finance. But today, the subset itself has become the mother, or become a dominant factor as compared to Islamic finance itself. So if someone asks me why is that the case, for me it's very simple. When you talk about sustainability, it's easy to measure. When you talk about sustainability, it's easy to standardize. When you talk about sustainability, you can easily measure the impact. You can talk about sustainability is a narrative that everyone think that is important, because the climate change apparently is real. You can see the flooding in Pakistan. 1/3 of Pakistan now is underwater. And just a month ago, 2 months ago, Bangladesh was underwater. And climate change will pose a very serious challenges in many parts of the world, especially in the poor countries. Like they say in Bangladesh, for example, there will be a portion of the country will not become inhabitable anymore. So they have to move to bigger cities like Dhaka and inland cities. So, and Dhaka is really crowded. 20-30 million people are living in Dhaka. So if you have to bring in another 20 million, where are these people going to go? All right. And Bangladesh is not a small country. It's about 150 to 170 million people living in such a density, high density places. And now you want to increase it furthermore, and you will have a lot more other problems, crime, congestion and pollution and so on and so forth. So when you talk about sustainability, people can see, oh, okay, I'm talking about this, I'm talking about some real issues, and I need to do something about it. However, when people talk about Islamic finance, whether we like it or not, people only talk about, okay, if I do this, it's Sharia compliance, right? Okay, I'm free from, doing some sinful activities. Okay, so instead of, for me, that's fine. But for me, this is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. It's a necessary, but not sufficient. So in order for you to make it sufficient, this is where I want to talk about the next slides. Can we move on, please? Okay, the future. All right. So in order for us to make it sufficient, and this idea actually I got from my dean, who just joined us recently. All right, he keep every time I spend time with him, he always talk about how important it is to revive, the glory of Islam, and use the contribution of the Islamic scholars, and then I was thinking about it. What he says is true. All my life I've been reading about Friedman and Keynesian and Adam Smith and so on and so forth, and I never put any thoughts, even though I came from INSEF, I never put thoughts to the idea of Ibn Khaldun. And he was right, because all this while I thought Ibn Khaldun was a precursor to all these latest ideas that we have today. But he said something very profound that remind me the fact that the idea of Ibn Khaldun is not a precursor, but actually is an alternative to this idea. So then he talked about morality and ethics, and why I want to bring this idea of morality and ethics, because one of the, I mean, this is not my words, but this is his idea, so I have to give credit to him. So he said that all this while we were talking more about economics, about materialism, about the fact that GDP growth is more important, and how we build an infrastructure so that our GDP per capita goes up and everything. But we ignore our emphasis on morality and ethics. So and he quote what we said about Ibn Khaldun, because Ibn Khaldun simply said the sustainability can only be achieved when we put our emphasis on morality and ethics. So for me, that statement is quite profound, and this is one thing I managed to get from him in the few engagement I have with him recently. So I thought maybe I should really revisit my perspective as well. That all my life I've been just thinking about to approach the economic problem from what I know, from what I studied, about Friedman, about Keynesian, about Samuelson, and all these common names that being presented to me again and again, and trying to figure out the solutions. But unfortunately, despite the growth that we have achieved today, think about it, despite all the growth that we have achieved today we can have all kind of technology. All right, you just name the technology that we don't have. We have quantum computing, we have biotech, we have nanotech. Now we understand so much than 100 years ago. But despite of that, our morality, our ethics is questionable big time, especially in the Muslim world. In the Western world, you have LGBT problem, you have liberal thinking, people are losing his identity. But in the Muslim world, we have governance problem, we have corruptions, and so on and so forth. And honestly, I've never thought this way, that to approach finance and from morality and ethics perspective, and trying to look at Ibn Khaldun idea as an alternative. I do not know whether what I'm saying will be materialized or not, but his comment is a thought for me, and I just want to share this thing with you, is that maybe we should really look at economics or even finance slightly from a different perspective, Or maybe when you look at it from sustainability perspective, we also can bring the elements of morality and ethics as well, because we are doing what is fair for the future generation. We are doing what is right for the future generation. We do not want to leave this world. It's a moral thing to do, and it's ethical things to do, not just to think about our life, but also to think about the future generation life as well. Okay, can we move on? Okay. All right. So I'm about to finish my presentation anyway. It's no point of listening to someone for a very long period of time. So how we can achieve this, how we can make Islamic finance more exciting for people, we have to solve real problems. All right, we have to really address what we call as a food security problem, because this is going to become even worse in the Muslim world. If you watch Al Jazeera every day, you probably going to feel like you are hopeless and you cannot do much because people are dying of hunger. In Pakistan, for example, people are lining up just waiting for food because they have not eaten for a few days because of the flood and so on and so forth. And because of the problem in Ukraine and Russia, now we are not even able to feed most of the people because we don't have food security. So these are the fundamental things that we have to achieve, and how Islamic finance can actually support this. Number two, financial inclusion. All right, the Islamic finance, Alhamdulillah, because of the presence in Islamic banking. In fact, there's a case study in Pakistan. The presence of Islamic banking in Pakistan actually have increased inclusion and bring more people into banking and also into the mainstream finance. But just bringing them into banking is not just relevant, but we have to do more in terms of educating them, in terms of giving them financial solution, so that they can actually balance their life in the real side and on the financial side as well. So we need to give them a mechanism to increase their wealth, to protect their wealth, and also to manage their risk through takaful and so on and so forth. So better and simpler solution through fintech or through banking, Islamic banking, should be channeled to people who are literally unaware about how exactly they should carry their life in this particular world. Maybe we don't realize it because we are educated. But if you travel to some of the Muslim countries, to Indonesia, to Bangladesh, to Pakistan, and to many African countries, you probably realize that all the things that we are enjoying right now, the fundamental things that we are enjoying right now, are simply not there. Okay. All right. So this is something that we need to think about. Second thing is that we have to make inequality as one of our biggest jihad. We must create a solution where the wealth can be accessible to everyone. They can also accumulate wealth. We give opportunity for them to be part of the capital accumulation through real economic activity and so on and so forth. And through SMEs especially, so that they can actually have chances to acquire more wealth through businesses and through good economic activity, rather than remain poor all these years. And last but not least, the fundamental problem is, and this is going to be a serious problem in the Muslim world, is about how we manage our refugees. We have Rohingyas problem, we have Syrian problem, we have Palestinian problem, and we have also wars in Yemen and so on and so forth. And many more people will get displaced because of this geopolitical tension that taking place. Right now, we have issue with China and Taiwan. We have Ukraine and Russia. Even if you follow the news, even in Balkan, we have a problem between Kosovo and Serbia, and so on and so forth. And all these things are basically the precursor to higher risk or higher political tension. So this is what happened when a superpower start feel that they are threatened and they want to fight back, try to claim back their so-called supremacy, and they're willing to sacrifice millions of people for them to achieve their objective. And this is something that we learn from history, that sometimes when the superpower feel threatened, they are willing to do a lot of things in order for them to reclaim their position as basically the number one or the supreme power in this particular world. And that will create a lot more problem. And we need to figure out right now how Islamic finance can channel the resources, the financing, in terms of creating this fundamental infrastructure, that we as a Muslim doesn't have to live as a refugee, but we can actually survive in our own world. Not only survive, but prosper, and not only prosper, but create solution as what we have done before, where we provide safe haven for the refugee from the Western world to the Muslim world. But now the Muslim world are seeking refugee in the Western world, and we have to reverse that particular trend because of our innovative ideas and solution. Okay, next one, please. Last one, I think. Okay. Okay, so I already talked about fintech. The reason why fintech is so important is that because it allows solution that we can, before this is impossible to service so-called, the excluded people. But in fintech, we can actually provide similar solution by the banking sector at a much micro level. All right, and you can give 1,000 loan, 1,000 riyal loan. You can even give 500 riyal loan financing, and so on and so forth. So fintech allow all these solutions that only was possible through a large institution, but you allow similar solution to, for what we call as the micro level, which is more important right now because there are more people in the micro level which require solution and much compared to people at the much higher level. Can we move on, please? Okay, so these are some of my suggestions. If I can just sum it up, this is some of the research which I did in the past. So I talk about how to transform SMEs. So these are some of the basic principles which I identify in terms of transforming SMEs. So I talk about 9 category of transformations or 9 category of enhancement which is required for SMEs in terms of embracing what we call as a new values or more robust values in terms of capturing greater market share in the world. But why SMEs are so important? Because SMEs are the one who create more jobs. SMEs are the one who actually contribute the largest portion to GDP, in some countries up to 40 to 50%. SMEs are the one who able to quickly be established, that doesn't really require much capital and much government intervention, so on and so forth. So a lot of people always undermine the importance of SMEs because people only talk about big institutions, like big guys, want to work with big corporations and everything. But more often people fail to understand is that a robust economy is not just about big corporation, but a robust economy must be, coupled with, robust SMEs as well. So that's why you look at Germany, you look at most of the advanced countries, majority of their policies are driven and towards SMEs, towards supporting SMEs, towards make SMEs much more resilient and much more innovative. So I'm really passionate about this, and this is one of the research that I did for one of the largest bank in Malaysia in terms of how we can come up with the principle of building up SMEs. Let's move on. Okay. So some of the thoughts, this is also one of my consultancy project which I did for the same bank, but I was not able to complete this consultancy project because of my migration to Qatar. But I look forward to complete this with some of the institution in Qatar maybe. So when we talk about this, we are talking about impact banking, all right? We come out with ideas that how banks can actually become an institution, what we call as the beyond banking. And we identify 5 pillars. Banks is responsible of not just make them profitable, that they should basically measure their success based on customers, employees, shareholders, a community, and also suppliers. So you have what we call as financial KPI, and you also have non-financial KPI. So a true success of the bank is when you are not only maximizing financial KPI, but you also maximizing non-financial KPI. Why is that the case? Because banking are the central pillars of economic development. So when the banks start being the good guy, when banks start thinking about positivity, when the banks try to channel their resources toward making a greater impact to the society, then you can really see that the other smaller players realize that, okay, if I want to get financing, I need to do good things. If I want to get financing, I must be climate savvy. If I want to get financing, I must make sure that I take care of my employee. If I want to get financing, I must make sure that I embrace, for example, modernity, have a better bookkeeping, trustworthy, better governance, so on and so forth. So banks can actually drive change because banks are centerpiece of the ecosystem, just like government, a centerpiece of the ecosystem. Banking sector is also the centerpiece of the ecosystem. So rather than change the people on the fringes and the peripheral, you can actually make changes by focusing on the centerpiece. So the moment you're able to impact the centerpiece, then the centerpiece can actually make changes to the fringes and also the peripheral people who are living on the edge. All right, so that is why, you know, driving changes is much more easier when it's top-down approach as compared to a bottom-up approach. Either way is possible, but sometimes the top-down approach can be much more convenient in terms of making changes. When people ask me, you know, because I've been living here for 10 months right now, no, actually 11 months, close to my 1 year celebration next month. People ask me, you know, why you think that Qatar is successful? I say it's very simple, right? You just look at the leadership. When the leadership has vision, and everything will basically follow the leader's vision. I'm not sure about other GCC countries because I never lived there. I've been there, but I can only tell you about Qatar because I've been living here for almost 1 year. So I can tell you that, you know, it's easy to make things when the leadership is clear about what his vision is all about. For example, I'm working in Education City, so I can see the vision of Education City, how much infrastructure they have put in place. So when the vision is straightforward and clear and actually putting the money in the right place and try to achieve the right thing, then everything will basically fall in place. So economy is not complicated unless you are making it complicated. All right, let's move on, please. Last one. I think last one. My apology. Okay. So let me quickly talk about this thing. It's not actually my idea, but it's actually one of the professor that being talked about lately, becoming very popular lately, Professor Maria. So he says that, you know, forget about, living with negative externalities, forget about this idea of free market, invisible hand, that market will correct itself and so on and so forth, but we need to now shape the market. So when you talk about shaping the market means that, you create an objective, you create a mission, and you try to put all the right initiative into the right place and then try to achieve those missions. So she gave example of NASA project. The idea is to send people to the moon. So, and that is the vision and that is the mission. And apparently people only talking about sending people to the moon, but people don't understand is that in the process of sending people to the moon, they have created more than hundreds of technologies. I remember I was watching Al Jazeera that day, and someone asked this guy, because they came out with this telescope that was 10 billion US dollar that allow you to explore the astronomy of this world, the universe of this world. So someone asked them, is it worth it? Why we are spending so much money? But he said, you don't just look at the technology, don't just look at the knowledge that we have created, but look at the spillover technology that we have created. Look at all the cameras in your phone, which is created because of the technology that, that we have spent money and investment in terms of. So the point I'm trying to make here is actually quite simple. So when you have bigger picture, when you have bigger ideas, sometimes the ideas can be so big that you are not able to achieve it. But don't worry so much, because bigger ideas will lead to much more impact, as in terms of creating smaller ideas and more practical ideas, so on and so forth. So Islamic finance is a big idea, very abstract. Economic justice is very abstract. So people will say this is not practical. We have to live in the practical world. For those people who keep criticizing academics and all the scientific papers that we have written and so on and so forth, our work is not about solving all the problems. We are just basically creating this bigger shape ideas, mission, so that when you start doing it slowly, you will see the economic effect. For example, now you can see the idea of wakaf and zakat integration. So 20 years ago, this is just an idea, but today you can see the practicality of it. So the practicality of any ideas will take place after 20, 30 years. People talk about GPS. Do you know that the GPS concept was established in the 70s by defense industry? All right. Only after 80s, they allow the defense industry allow the GPS technology to be embraced by the public and by the community. And when you are enjoying this GPS technology, only lately you have waste and so on and so forth. So ideas take 30, 40 years before you can see the outcome of it. So if you are giving up just because your idea is being rejected by one presentation or by two presentation, then you are not really a true scholar or a true innovator, because you just give up because someone laughed at you after one or two presentations. So if you believe in your ideas, keep pushing it. Inshallah, after 30, 40 years, people will see the value of it, and you can see that more and more people are actually make money and out of it, or creating an economic activity out of it. Okay, next one, please. Right, I also can't remember my slide. I did it very quickly the last 2 days. So, all right. So I already talked about this. We need to move away from market failures. We need to basically look at all the negative externalities differently, and we need to basically push these negative externalities towards what we call as the new way of doing business. So we cannot accept, or what is that, climate change is just an consequences of economic growth. No, we have to accept the climate change is the actual policy. All right, so we cannot accept the consequences of our action anymore as just a side effect. We have to accept the fact that the side effect itself has become the main policy. Okay, so that's why we are embracing circular economy and many more new ideas. Okay, next one, please. All right, so that's all, brothers and sisters. So the final thing I would like to say is that, again, I want to thank Dr. Mohidin for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. People say when you talk about futures and challenges, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do have is that some of my colleagues are working on some amazing things for Islamic finance. So I see the future of it. I see the idea of decentralization of finance will actually empower the Islamic financial institution. So those days, the bigger you are, the more powerful. But now the ideas are coming that, even being small, you can also being powerful as well. But what matters is that we do things which create solutions for the Muslim world. And that is more important than just higher ROE or higher profitability and so on and so forth. So with that, Dr. Mohidin, I end my presentation. Thank you so much. I have taken more than what I've been allocated. My apology for that, and also for delayed. And inshallah, I'll do my best to answer if there's any question from the participants.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Eskandar, for this brilliant and excellent presentation. And Alhamdulillah, we got the fact and also the future challenges, the paths to the solution. So I believe that all participants benefited and got some new ideas and also ways to solutions. So we thank you very much, Prof. On behalf of our Nadal Iqtisad Islami, we thank you from our bottom of heart to always support this association and to be with us always. Thank you so much. So we can open the floor for sometimes maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If there is any question or any additional point, if anybody would like to add. So we are here to respond. If there is any question from the online guest, so you may raise your hand or you may write in the question box.
I guess everyone wants to go for lunch.
Yeah, but in fact, I think people from different countries join the session. Yeah. I guess so. Okay, there's a brother Ibrahim. Ibrahim Ishol Ahmed. Yes, brother Ibrahim, please welcome. Brother Ibrahim, we switch on microphone for you. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam wa rahmatullahi.
My name is Ibrahim Ishola Ahmad Rufai from Nigeria, a PhD student in Morocco. I greet our guest, our lecturer for today. The topic was very interesting, and the lecturer was able to clarify many things that I wanted to know, and the Almighty Allah reward him in abundance. My question is about the paper. We always benefit from al-Mada al-Almiya, the papers that our guest always presents in this great Nadi. And I don't know whether our lecturer will be generous to give us this paper to benefit from it. And because my PhD research, I will need this paper, and I will love to get it. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, I will share my email address. You can write email directly to me and just tell me what you want, and we will share, all the relevant information is available to me, of course, for sure. We always supportive of people who are trying to pursue knowledge and try to basically use the knowledge for, the benefit of the society, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My PhD research is based on Islamic endowment, and I will touch many areas. That is why. Thank you very much. I will expect you the sharing of your email address. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Mohideen has my email address, and I'm sure he can share with all of you, inshallah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brother Ibrahim. I'm going to share the email in the chat group so you can take it from the chat. If there are any other question, okay, thank you, Rashid Mohammed. Thank you very much for this presentation. You are most welcome. And many of them are thanking Doctor for this wonderful session. Brother Zainul Abidin, okay, Barakallah Fiqh, Jazakallah Khair. Brother Khalid Al Ansari, thank you, Dr. Eskandar, and the organizer, most welcome. Brother Bangle Muhammad from Guinea, okay. We thank you very much as well for joining us. So is there any other question or?
Okay. Yeah, so I think that should be okay. Inshallah, if you have any questions, you have my email address, so please email it to me. My apology, I have to leave a bit early because I've got class. I have to prepare for my class for this evening, inshallah. So just if you allow me to leave.
Yes, Doctor, inshallah. Thank you very much for joining us always, for joining us and for responding our invitation. Inshallah, we'll see you again, Doctor, in any other session very soon, maybe after 1 month. And we thank all the participants for joining us, and especially our thanks to our officials in Nadal Iqtisad Islami, especially Dr. Alal Abid, Director General of the Association. So with that, we conclude today's session here. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, I'm going to share the email now. So if anybody needs the email, you can get it in the chat group now. I'm going to share now. Okay, Doctor, thank you very much. See you again, inshallah. Barakallah fiqh.
Thank you.
Yes, M. Rashid. Yes, this is the email of Dr. Iskandar. M. A. Rashid at hbkueedu.qa. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, see you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.